in an attempt to always make these videos better, I do everything I can to learn how to do electronic stuff, like messing with, I use OBS to record. And I realized that some of the things that plague me are because electronics do things without me telling them to do. And I discovered something that it was not doing before. If it seems like the video is, I don't know, actually in the center of the screen now. I know a couple of the previous videos, apparently when it was recording me, it was like taking my face and like shifting it to the right. I would sometimes catch it. If you go back and watch the older ones, you'll probably notice that more. Sometimes I didn't always catch it because I'd be in the middle of editing it. Wouldn't even see it till the end, and at which point you can't change it because you have to do it before you start cutting it up and all that, but bunch of jargon. But just so you guys know, I'm always trying to make things better. I don't always manage successfully, but I'm doing my dangdest, all right? So, you know, I appreciate you guys sticking with me through this little journey. And I am excited to announce, as of this point in the videos, the logo might be changing. I don't think it's going to be changed in this video, but here's the new one. This is the new logo. Look at how fancy that is. It's a little sailboat. It's a sloop. It's a sloopy sloop. And a sloop, similar to a human being, is a ship of a certain tonnage with a single mast. And, you know, that's what humans are, because we only get one mast, because our mast is called the spine. And I love treating the spine. So I'm kind of like I'm like a human body sailor, I guess is a good way to put it. But, you know, I was kind of excited about that. I really like it. And I got to say, the crew that helped me build this thing did a really good job. But technically speaking, the business's name is going to change here soon to New Englander Chiropractic. Isn't that fancy? Because we're in New England. That's where Massachusetts is. Because there was an old England on the other side of the pond, way over, you know, east of us, but we decided to put a new spin on it, right, and make it new. So this one's got a new nice coat of spit shine on it that makes it way better than over there. So there, take that. No offense if you're from England. I still like you. We could still be friends. Anyway, but back to actually doing Reddit stuff. You want to do any of that? Okay, here's the question. I kind of like this one. This one's a little bit goes into that medical distrust thing a little bit. So this will be a little bit more on the philosophy side. I think the next one I'm actually going to try and do another hard anatomy one, just so you know, there's always something new going on the channel. But here we go. Skeptic goes to a chiropractor and he changed my world. So I did give this a quick read just to see who he meant by critic. The person that's reading, who's actually typing it, was the critic. So it's not like he knew somebody who went to a chiro who had his life changed or whatever. Just for the record, I did check on that. But he goes on to say, I say he, it could be she, but again, I'm going to use the word he because that's easier for me. Apparently, I don't know why I can't say anything else. Had been going to someone before who just wasn't getting to the right spots. Neck was twisted at the base of my skull, the base of my neck. Oh Lord, he was a magician, really, really old school, but exceptional as a chiropractor. I had pain in my foot, gone, pain in my knee, gone, pain in my neck, double gone. He fixed me good. Hope to keep going so I can fix it all up. I seriously have a better outlook on life after this appointment. I really hate some chiropractors who lean so hard away from modern medicine, from modern science, that going to them makes you question their intention. The last person I went to asked me to do a history lesson on how the Rockefellers homeschooled their own kids and raised an indictment of the entire pharmaceuticals industry as being the cause of all illness in modern medicine. I just couldn't feel like I was getting care with each session, feeling like I was getting a manifesto with each session. Thank you to medical professionals who leave their opinions to themselves. Okay, so let's kind of dissect this a little bit step by step. He went to a chiropractor who was really old school. So here's something that I like to say about many things in life, not even just chiro, but if there's something that is tried and tested and it continues to be prevalent in the world, and it's not like super, there's not like a bunch of nonsense attached to it, but it's just something that has helped people throughout all of life and history and blah, 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 and it just keeps coming up as a successful way to deal with something. There's probably a reason. A lot of the stuff that, especially these days, everybody's looking to kind of put their own spin on something. And when they do that, some of it might be, you know, monetarily minded, I guess is what word we'll use. But a lot of times when you look at something that's old and tested, it's hard to make it seem shiny and new and jazzy for somebody, you know, like that might be interested in something really, really fancy, and they think to themselves, oh, my problems are so different than everybody else's that there's no way an old-fashioned remedy is going to work on me. So as a good example, something that happens with muscle pain that people in the old days used to do is something called an Epsom salt bath. So an Epsom salt bath is, when you really boil it down, it's water with magnesium in it, and magnesium is actually a like a natural muscle relaxer. Now, did they start doing Epsom salt baths and all that before they actually discovered like what magnesium does in the human body and all that? I actually don't entirely know off the top of my head, but a lot of times if somebody has like tight feet and legs and all that, one of the remedies for it back in the day was, hey, do an Epsom salt bath. I have recently discovered through research that there's a lot of research out there that says that Epsom salt bath doesn't do anything and that it doesn't help out that actual situation or blah, blah, blah. But there's still a lot of people that do Epsom salt baths, or people that do it here, and they say that it helps them. Is it placebo? Maybe. Is it got an actual benefit to doing it for their particular thing? There very well might be. And I'm not going to say Epsom salt baths are or are not effective for treating people with like tight feet or plantar fasciitis or any kind of like calf muscle-y based problem. But I will say that there's conflicting reports on it. I personally think that Epsom salt bath is not the worst thing that you could possibly do if you're attempting to find some kind of remedy for a foot calf based problem. I think that if you put your feet in magnesium water, the worst case scenario is it probably doesn't do anything for you, or it makes you kind of itchy, right? It's not like potentially dangerous, but there's also the chance that there's something that's really, really beneficial. But it's a really, really old way of treating something that is kind of hard to put a new spin on, shall we say. And so if you're going to get a Epsom salt bath and you want to sell Epsom salt baths, there's not like a whole lot you can do to that industry, as far as I know, unless you're inventing some kind of new formula for the Epsom salt bath, in which case it may not be Epsom salt, blah, 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 or, might be Epsom salt adjacent or whatever. And when you have a situation like that, there's less potential excitement, right, for having like the new jazzy way of treating something in a way where you're just like, oh yeah, look at me, I figured it all out and I've got the one fix all for everybody's problems. Again, not to say there's anybody out there doing with Epsom salt bath. That was just kind of the one that came to mind as like an old fashioned technique. But in this case, you're going to a really old school chiropractor and he treated you in such a way where most of your stuff got a lot better. Well, not to really, tarnish my own industry, as I could potentially say. But with every single time you have a new generation of chiropractors, a lot of them are trying to make their mark on the industry in a way where they stand out because they think, oh yeah, my technique is potentially very, very beneficial for what people are suffering from, whether that's financially minded or it's actually minded in a way of like, oh, what I'm doing is helping. And there's a lot of new age techniques that are really, really good, really, really helpful, and they don't necessarily seem to be super financially motivated, which is good. But the problem is you have some who do these things and some of their techniques maybe not the best, and some of it has a little bit of what I'm not going to necessarily call it hocus pocus or a lack of foundation in proper actual medical science, because sometimes when you're trying to be a trendsetter or discover a new way of doing something, sometimes you have to go outside of what is known, and they might be right. And funny enough, that's kind of where chiropractic got started, where there was a little bit of a scientific basis for it, but there wasn't really any research on it because nobody was doing chiro. Well, a lot of these things need to start somewhere where you have an idea, you test it, and if it helps people, well, then you might be onto something, but it takes time to get research for it, especially when it comes to medical science. And funny enough, chiropractic really didn't have a whole ton of medical research until actually fairly recently. I'd say the past probably like 20, 30 years is when the majority of when a lot of the stuff that we do really, the actual scientific impact of it has really made itself quite painfully apparent. Was that always the case? No. When we first got started, there was just certain things in research that there was limitations on when it comes to like double blinds and blind studies and blah, blah. I won't go into too much detail of that kind of stuff, but it's one of the reasons why it was difficult for the founding chiropractors to really say, hey, look at what we're doing. This is the exact thing that's happening, because a lot of what they were trying to show people was in a lot of ways conjecture. And if you go to an old school chiropractor who may not have all this like super in-depth scientific knowledge on something, not to say that they're so old that they've been around since the founding, because you figure chiropractic's almost like, at least it's almost like, I think it's more than 100 years old now at this point, because I think it's technically, I looked this up not too long ago. It actually technically started in like the very, very late 1800s. I thought Palmer was founded in 1905 or something like that, but I think when I looked it up for the video, I think it was like 1896 or something like that. I'll probably put it up there again, but you figure it's been around for a really, really long time. And I think that the true core tenets of chiropractic stand on their own, in that if you go and get adjusted and you relieve the tension on the nervous system in whatever part of the body, not even just spinal, because in this case, a lot of the stuff he complains about aren't even spinal when it comes to at least his knee and his foot. Now, why is it, and I guess that'll lead into like the next point, he says, I had pain in my foot gone, pain in my knee that's gone. Well, why is it that pain in the neck and then pain in the foot and the knee seem to be linked? Well, here's a funny little thing. I'll probably put like some kind of chart up here. If somebody's standing straight, like if you're looking at somebody standing straight at you, if somebody's neck is twisted, what'll happen is, and my example, I'm trying to get as straight as possible. If your neck is twisted, you'll do this. And then what your neck has to do is it has to maintain this thing called the eyes on the horizon, right? Because whenever humans are made or whatever, our sense of balance comes from the ability to look at some objects around us and essentially base where we are in time and space off of the knowledge of where the horizon is. Because when humans were made, there weren't buildings and all that kind of stuff. So you'd have to look out over in the distance and say, oh, there's the horizon. That is what my brain essentially is basing its equilibrium on. If you take out the whole inner ear part of that, right? Or the body's trying to make sure that when you're doing something, it's trying to maintain that, roughly speaking, horizon type effect. Now, if your neck is doing something like this, if you're doing this, what happens is that this part of your neck has to tilt, and then the parts down here have to tilt as well to maintain your ability to keep your eye on the horizon. So if you're doing this, all of a sudden your body's going to do everything it can to try and get your eyes to be even with the distance. So your neck is going to kind of instinctively move in such a way where your eyes sit level. You don't see a whole lot of people walking around, and I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there with neck problems. So it's like you can't just say, oh yeah, well nobody actually has neck pain, and that's why nobody has this. Like nobody, I don't notice this. A lot of people have a lot of neck pain. Let's put it that way. But what happens is when you're looking at most people, they don't look like this. They're not walking around like with their head sideways, but their body will like follow it, and they'll try and essentially like keep it nice and level. So they'll look like this, right? If you look at people's shoulders, there's a lot of people with hiked up shoulders on one side or the other, and that's your body essentially using its spine to try and keep your eyes level. So what does that have to do with the foot and the knee? Well, if you're tilting, when you're walking around, if you're tilting, your knee and your ankle especially, which in this case, he might be perceived as like a foot pain, or it could be the foot is having problems because the ankle is not mobile. What'll happen is that when the horizon moves, your entire body has to follow your neck. So now all of a sudden, you're putting a lot more stress that should be shared equally between both knees. Now it's all going on one knee, or it's all going on one ankle. So that's why sometimes what chiropractors will do to kind of wow people is there's a fascial plane that goes from the ankle all the way up to the atlas. So again, I'll probably put a little picture up here, but the ankle, people, hopefully you know where the ankle is. But atlas is the bone at the very tippy top of the spine up here, before the occiput. Some people consider, well, occiput is a part of spine. Regardless, atlas is the very top of the cervical spine. So whenever that tilts, your body has to functionally alter how it's moving from top to bottom to maintain this position. So if you're putting a lot of extra stress on your knee and ankle, well, that might be because your head is tilted. Now, does that mean that everything in between it should also have some kind of problem? There's probably some issues going on throughout the entire spine, and it's worth at least adjusting all those areas to get them to move loosey-goosey so the rest of the body can essentially, make up for the perceived lack of movement. And this is actually something that chiropractors debate on: should you adjust a segment that is stuck but maybe isn't necessarily the problem? And they call it compensating fixation or curve, right? Because it's something that isn't necessarily the problem, but it might be there because something else is a problem. And a lot of the different techniques and the chiropractic techniques will have some kind of discussion point on should you adjust those or not. I've always been in the frame of mind that if you adjust those areas, it helps the patient feel better a little bit quicker. Whether it like slows down the healing and all that, I'm not entirely sure I believe in one way or the other. I've kind of seen discussion points that go both ways. I have my own personal take on that. I usually just err on the side of making sure I adjust it, just because if somebody comes in, I want to make sure I do as much work as possible where the person will appreciate it. And a lot of patients will react differently to that. So a lot of times there's a patient preference to that kind of stuff too. I hope that makes sense. The main fixation the main point I'm trying to make here is that one area of the body, if it has a problem, there can be implications for things on the totally opposite side of the body. And that's something that a good chiro, a lot of old-fashioned chiros always have in mind, because they've been doing this for so many years. If you've been a chiro for 50, 60 years, these little things, it's like bread and butter. You just kind of like, you're automatically assuming, as a chiro anyway, you're automatically knowing that you have to, if there's something wrong with the left shoulder, you got to make sure you look at the right shoulder because one's moving too much over the other and blah, blah, blah. And this is super basic chiropractic from the perspective of old-fashioned chiropractic, right? Now, there's a lot of chiros out there that will try different techniques where maybe they don't think like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, where if you go to what they call an upper cervical doc, the only bones that they really want to treat are the atlas. Maybe they might not ever touch your low back, and they might not never touch your ankle, and they might never touch your knee and all that. Does that make them wrong? Not necessarily, but what could potentially happen is if I go to that chiro and I get that kind of treatment, maybe I don't react very well. Maybe it's not something that my body necessarily needed to be fixed, but Joe Schmo behind me might come in right after me with the exact same problem, and his particular genetic makeout out and his particular patient preferences and his particular way of looking at the world completely changes that. And so he gets that same treatment and it feels way, way better, which goes on to the first part of this whole, this skeptic, I guess. Not skeptic anymore. I guess now he's a lover. He's a lover, not a fighter. And he noticed that when he was going to his previous person, he didn't say chiro, he might have been going to like a PT, maybe he was going to like a medical doctor, and they weren't getting the right spots, and he knows that it was because that his neck was twisted at the base of the skull and the base of the neck. Well, there you go. Maybe somebody else goes to that person that was being treated, that he was going to before, and they feel great. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. There's definitely going to be a preference thing based on just what it is that everybody needs at whatever point. So whenever somebody comes to me and I do my brand of chiropractic, if they don't exactly get what they're after, it's not necessarily, in my opinion, a hit on me where the things that I do don't work or are not effective for people, because I know they are, because I've seen people get better. And that might just be because there's a personal preference thing, that there's something lost in translation, which is why whenever you go to a chiropractor, if you don't feel like it works, it's always worth, in my opinion, at least giving it another shot with maybe a different doc, because maybe they just have a different way of treating it that you prefer more than the other. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a good thing personally, because that means, if there's something that you don't like, but you really like the concepts of something like a more holistic approach to your health, well, maybe it's just that particular holistic practitioner wasn't your cup of tea, and that's okay. So just go find somebody who is your cup of tea, and you might be completely shocked at how it ends up. Hey there, it's me, Dr. D, and I know you're watching this channel, and I really appreciate it, and we're having a lot of fun, but something that I have to ask you, can you please like, favorite, and subscribe to this channel? It'd be a really, really helpful thing. And little guys like me, little old chiropractors like me, just trying to make our way in this world here, I keep getting told I'm supposed to tell you guys to do this stuff, so please do. And if you can go to that little bell, I think it's like below us, and you give that a little click, and it says to just remind you when the videos come out, that would just be swell. So thank you very much for watching our videos and making sure that we feel as appreciated as we do, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. I'll get back to the video. And yeah, when he says that he had pain in the neck and all of a sudden he has a different outlook on life, let me just tell you, when you're somebody who has been dealing with some kind of like musculoskeletal pain and you all of a sudden find some way to make it go away, there is nothing more just like inspiring than just being like, oh my gosh, I don't have to be in pain all the time, and my brain can think better because of the fact that I'm not constantly fighting myself and how much pain I'm manifesting and all that. It is a good way to handle a lot of personal like anxiety and depression when it comes to just not being in pain anymore. And there's actually been scientific proof out there that says that getting adjusted actually opens up a lot of bandwidth in your brain, because it helps clear up some of the kind of like the clogged up feeling that your nerves will have trying to transport afferent and efferent, which means up and down messages, with a cleaner highway. It just takes some of the traffic off of the highway of your spine going up and down, right? I hope that makes sense. And yeah, I know that there are definitely some chiros out there who like to do the allopathic philosophy, I guess, when it comes to something like the Rockefeller homeschool and the pharmaceutical thing. Listen, I will say I'm not a huge fan of pharmaceuticals, especially the American pharmaceutical industry. They could do things here that they're not allowed to do in other parts of the world. Is that good or bad? I'm not the moral judge. Do I like it? No. If it was up to me, would I let it happen? No. But it's not my call. And I do think that when you have pharmaceutical companies that get away with some of the things that they do, they erode public trust, and you find yourself in situations like this, right, where you have people who have to essentially kind of like drag some of that stuff out in the light. Is it required for you to have to like watch a video and take a history test every single time you want to go to a chiropractor just to get adjusted? No, I don't think that's really the way to do it necessarily. Maybe it's just something that you bring up in conversation where the chiro can bring it up and blah blah blah. I don't want to say it's scare tactics. I want to say it's just them trying to help you in a different kind of way, where they're trying to show you what it is that we're up against here, shall we say. I get why they do it. Do I like it? No, not really, but I do understand. And that's, again, kind of a personal preference thing. There are a lot of patients out there who love that kind of stuff, where you guys hear that, right? Who is messaging me? I'm at work. Gee, don't I'm sitting here in front of this computer trying to talk about stuff. And, there's some patients out there who really dig that kind of stuff. And there you go. That's exactly what I was saying before, where it just kind of depends on what the person's really into. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. And thank you for medical professionals who leave their opinions to themselves. Yeah, and again, I've talked about this, maybe not ad nauseum at this point, but there's definitely been previous videos where I've talked about, if you go to somebody for health-related topics, when you go there, there's a lot of people out there who don't want to get preached to, and I do my best to not preach at anybody, but there's a lot of chiros out there who have very strong ideals, and there's medical doctors as well, and there's massage therapists as well. They have very strong feelings about certain things, and they might go a little overboard on trying to tell you about some of it, and they're doing it because they're trying to help. I don't think they're doing it maliciously. I don't think they're doing it for any kind of like ulterior motive, or they're trying to take advantage of you or whatever. But there's a lot of times where, as I've said before, people just kind of don't care. There's enough of a group of people where they come to you you because they want you to help them with their pain. They don't go there for history lessons. They don't go there for personal speeches. They don't go there because they want to hear my personal take on, how the Bruins did in their last hockey game because, the center didn't win the face. Like, they don't care about that kind of stuff. They go there because they're having a problem. They want you to help. And if you could teach them something along the way, well, great. Do they usually turn their ears off whenever they start getting preached to? I think so. And I think there's a certain way to go about it. But again, I think that a lot of that comes down to personal preference. Not a whole lot of comments on this one, but there is one. I'll do this one real quick. The right chiropractor can be life-changing. I agree. I think if you could find a chiropractor who actually listens to you and really approaches you from a holistic standpoint, no matter where you are on where you want that holistic approach to be. There's a lot of people that come into this office who think my back hurts. There's a physical problem. Push on it, give me the racky cracky, I'll see you again in a month, out the door they go. Not a problem with that. Is there room for improvement and room for things that I personally think would make their life a lot better? Absolutely. Is it my responsibility for them to follow exactly how I think and feel about these things? No. If they come to me and they ask me, what can I do to make my life better? I'll be like, okay, well, that's a discussion. Let's talk about it. Where do we start? But if they come in and they're like purely physically minded and they're like, I have a boo-boo because I have a physical boo-boo. Will you make boo-boo go away for at least a little while so I can go back to work, so I can feed my kids and go to soccer practice and blah, blah, whatever. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. My job is to help you where you're at. But there are three legs to the stool. There's the physical, the mental, and the toxic. If you don't want to talk about all three, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm here if you want to be. We could talk about it all you want, within reason, of course. If you want to talk about it for a really long time, you might have to make a separate appointment where we talk about that kind of stuff, because there's probably somebody behind you. But regardless, it's something that I always try and keep in mind, where my personal opinion is there. Will it inform all the things that I do for people? Yeah, on some level, I think it would. Otherwise, people wouldn't come to me in the first place. Is it my job to pour information all over them like a blanket, like a super thick blanket on a hot summer day? No, I don't think so. But if it is cold outside and they want to learn something new that might help them with something to warm up next to the fire or whatever, well, that's why I'm here. I got a blanket for you. If you want it, it's all yours. But if you don't want it because it's too hot for you out there right now, then go for it. I'll be here when you need me. I hope that's a good allegory, I hope. But anyway, that's a really quick one. So this will be probably a little bit of a shorter one, but I think this one is super important, right? You could look at stuff like the whole body being one big functional unit. That's super important for people to really realize, that I don't think a lot of people fully draw the connection on. And I do agree that medical professionals kind of need to keep their own opinions to themselves unless they are specifically asked, and just meet people where they are so that you can help them grow to something that might be more productive health-wise and or otherwise, like, or whatever they're after, right? It's our job to help them with that and to steer them in at least a semi-correct direction. As long as you can kind of get them walking down that path, then I think it's a win. Not everybody's going to listen to me 100% of the time, and that's fine. I'm always here if you need me. So, I make sure that, they keep it popping as much as I keep it popping. So can you do me a favor and can you pop the like button and the subscription button? I'd really appreciate that. And thank you again for listening to this one. This one might be a little bit shorter. I wanted to make sure I got it out before I have a little vacation this weekend. Hooray! Hooray! So I just wanted to make sure it was done before I ran out of time. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you very much. Keep it popping out there. I hope you managed to have yourself another lovely week. I'll see you next week, and keep it popping. Love you.